The Urban Design Commission meeting is called to order. Janine, if you would please note the roll. And as Janine mentioned, I'd like to also reiterate to my fellow commissioners that we do have a new commissioner starting today, Alder Christian Alboris. I see him here in attendance, and since we have a relatively light agenda, maybe we'll have a chance to speak with you and learn a little bit more about you at the end of the meeting. But before we dive into our agenda, first I'm going to turn it over to Stefan from the city's IT department so he can remind us how to conduct ourselves during virtual meetings.
All right, thank you. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Panelists also have the ability to add their preferred pronouns after their names. Please do not alter your naming convention. Simply add text after your name. Please use the raise hand feature when you like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on commission members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I do not see any registrants for agenda item number 1, general public comment. So we will move directly to disclosures and recusals.
Chair, if I might interrupt for a moment, I believe we did have somebody who registered under item 0, which we think might have been item number 1, public comment. And we don't have that information. I'll ask our IT team to share that with us.
I don't have an item 0 or an item number 1 in the list that Julie sent me.
Yeah, I don't have anything showing up on my end for anything but number 4.
Yeah. Same here. Okay. Well, if there is somebody who would like to make a general public comment, certainly we can accommodate them sometime during the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that gets us back to disclosures and recusals.
I recuse myself from the agenda item.
Okay, so Rafiq recuses himself. That would officially be item number 4. Next up is the agenda overview. Sorry, not Julie, Janine.
Thank you, Chair. So this evening's agenda, just a reminder to the public, if you would like to submit some written comments, you can send it to urbandesigncomments@cityofmadison.com. And just please note that comments received after 3 p.m. the day of the meeting won't be posted until after the meeting. As our chair mentioned, we do have a rather short agenda this evening. Under public hearing items, we did have an application for 1121 South Park Street Comprehensive Design Review in Urban Design District number 7, but the applicant did withdraw that, which they had updated the package so the sign met the sign code. Under unfinished business, we had an application for 145 through 151 West Wilson Street and 309 through 321 South Henry Street, a new mixed-use building in UMX. The applicant had requested referral to the May 12th Urban Design Commission. So we'll see it on our next agenda. And also note for the public that you'll see it on the agenda for May 12th. Under new business, 222 through 232 East Olin Avenue, a new planned multi-use site located in Urban Design District number 1 It's an informational presentation. And a couple of things worth noting on this. This had gone before the Landmarks Commission for a demo report for the buildings located at 222 and 232 Olin. And some of that information is located in your UDC staff report, noting exactly what the findings were for the Landmarks Commission. And then with that, that's the end of the agenda. I can mention that there are a number of people from the public registered to speak, but also registered in either support or opposition. And Julie Cleveland will read those when we get to that. For now, I'm going to stop share on the agenda and invite the design team to be ready. We have Lance McGrath and Joseph Lee who are asking to speak for that item, and I'll let the chair introduce it, but I just want to make sure that they were on deck.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Before we move any further, I neglected to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from last time. Lois?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay. Seconded by Craig. Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, by unanimous consent, minutes are approved. The next item we have to undertake is the request for referral for item number 3. Is there a motion to move referral?
I move referral.
Okay, seconded by Tom, moved by Lois, then by unanimous consent. Agenda item number 3 is referred. So that now brings us to agenda item number 4, 222 through 232 East Olin Avenue. Janine has asked Lance and Joe to be on deck. So whoever wants to go first, we're certainly ready for your presentation.
Yeah, this is Lance. I'll get started if someone wants to pull the slideshow up. All right. So I'm going to try to keep my comments pretty brief. I'll talk a little bit about the project details and the site and why we think it's appropriate for this project. And then I'll turn it over to Joe to let him talk about the architecture. If we could go to the next slide. So I think everyone knows the location. We're right at the intersection of East Olin Avenue and John Nolan Drive. Next slide, please. So a little bit about, why this project at this location, what attracted us to it. It's definitely a pretty prominent site. It's on a, some would call it a gateway location, but unique in that it can really handle the scale of a project like this. We're, surrounded by major roads with Olin Avenue and John Nolan Drive, especially right on a rail corridor. You step outside the building, you're right adjacent to bike pedestrian paths. There's a dog park across the street. There's tennis courts. There's bus lines, multiple bus lines in the area, and virtually surrounded by city parks. Another nice feature for a project of this scale is we're over pretty close to a quarter mile away from the nearest residential home from the edge of our property. Existing uses are somewhat marginal right now. Area's been a little bit on the decline for the past few years, but in our mind, very few sites in this downtown that can handle a project of this scale. If this isn't the only one, there's a pretty short list. Next slide, please. You might have seen this article last week in the State Journal. Their editorial board wrote a nice article supporting the project. Basically arguing that the site's appropriate for this scale and it's better to be building up in Madison than having more urban sprawl. Next slide, please. So real quickly about the project. So the site, it's 1.5 acres. It will require the demolition of both the Coliseum and Wonder Bar buildings. The rest of the site is virtually all asphalt pavement. And we'll be replacing those with a new 18-story post-tension concrete mixed-use building. All total, it's about 450,000 square feet of building, including the parking. And it consists of the first 4 levels are basically a parking ramp that is wrapped by, the slide's a little bit old actually, but it's 3 stories of commercial at the eastern end of kind of facing the John Nolan intersection. And then along Olin Avenue, we have a large residential lobby, a commercial lobby, and a turnaround driveway that helps engage the street with, or the building with Olin Avenue. On top of that parking, we have 13 levels of residential. And then our top floor, the 18th level, is actually a mechanical penthouse. And there's a lantern feature incorporated into that also. Next slide, please. A little bit about the building. We've got, right now we're at 290 residential units, and they range from studios up to 3 bedrooms. The commercial space has 15,500 square feet, 342 parking stalls, and they're all covered within the building. There's no exterior surface parking. It's all within the footprint of the building. We do have 2 off-street loading zones, and then that nice turnaround vehicle entry feature that I mentioned before, which is a nice amenity for keeping all the delivery drivers we have in buildings like this, for whether it be food delivery or Amazon trucks, UPS, FedEx, Uber rides, that all that activity can happen off street, which is a nice plus. And then the building will also have a central high efficiency water source heat pump system. Next slide, please. I won't go into detail on this, but the building has a lot of amenities that'll make it a real desirable place for people to live. It's typically a challenge for us on these urban infill properties or projects to create a lot of amenity space. This project's unique in that we really have a full schedule of amenities that should be, as I mentioned, make it a real attractive place for people to live. Next slide, please. A little bit about the zoning. It's currently zoned SE, and our application will be requesting to rezone it to TE. The comp plan for this area does call out the site for employment, but there is a paragraph in the comp plan about changing the land use for this property in conjunction with the Alliant Energy Center plan. The city's also working on the South Madison plan right now, and the draft version of that plan does recommend high density residential for this area. So I think what we're proposing fits in pretty well with that. And then these aren't really zoning related, but the Alliant Energy Center plan and the Destination District plan, the vision that these 2 efforts created for this area, I think what we're proposing here fits in ideally with that. Next slide, please. A few blurbs from the comp plan about why projects like this should be supported. Next slide. So this is an excerpt from the Destination District plan and our site. You can see Olin Avenue kind of going on an angle on the bottom right side of the slide. Our site is actually the tall building on the right there, right where the hand is, the icon. And that just kind of shows what they're envisioning for this area going forward as part of that plan. Next slide, please. This is just a zoomed in area of that, kind of showing our site and the properties to the west going up to Winger Creek. Next slide. This is another excerpt from the plan that specifically addresses this area, basically touting it for a great opportunity for lakefront park-oriented living, and a lot of reasons why this type of project is appropriate here. Next slide, please. So this is my last one. A little bit about schedule. Slide's actually a little bit out of date, but We're submitting on May 19th our formal application to the city, and that gets us to City Council on August 3rd, assuming everything goes well. We'd like to start construction as early as September of this year. We have quite a bit of foundation work. The soils are very poor here, so it'll require a deep foundation system. There's also a lot of utility work that needs to be done on the site, rerouting of utilities. And so we'd like to get started on that a little bit earlier. Construction itself, it's a big project. It's going to take about 21 months. And ideally, we're open no later than August 1st of 2023, hopefully sooner, but wouldn't want to open any later than that. Timing is also really crucial for us. Construction costs keep going up every day. Interest rates are still incredibly favorable. And the market for this type of project is as strong as ever. It's been strong for a long time and appears to be staying that way. A little bit about financing for the project. We're looking at two different approaches. Your typical conventional bank financing, but we're also talking with WIDA to hopefully create some affordable units in the building. They have a program that they call the 710 program that's income restricted, and that would require that 20% of the units in the building be rented to those who don't make any more than 80% of Dane County median income. So hopefully if we're successful in getting the project financed by WIDA, we can go that route. They did a project for us that we opened in 2018 on Willie Street under the same program. And then lastly, a little bit about the Lion Energy Center and the Destination District plans. This was really an extensive planning process, and a lot of people were involved in it. A lot of time was spent on these, and we're really excited by the vision of those plans and their vision for this area. And our project right now, some might consider it a little pioneering maybe, but we think it can be a catalyst for future development in this area and really a step in realizing the vision of these plans and what they're trying to create here. And just excited to see what could happen in this area. And that's all I have. I'll turn it over to Joe to talk about the building in greater detail.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. But for Janine, if you can go to the next slide, is there an ability to give me pointing ability or not?
I don't think so. Is there, Janine?
No, we don't have that capability for attendees.
Okay. Well, that'll be a little bit challenging for this commission to know exactly the points that I'm talking about, but I'll try my best here. And obviously you guys can ask questions. When we go to the next slide, I think we might be able to skip that one as well. Lance covered the location well. We'll know it in the interest of time. So these are some photos of the existing site, and you guys have seen this. You know the site well. But we don't have to spend too much time on here unless you have some questions. You can flip to the next slide. And the next one, please. Pardon me. As Lance told you about the scale of the project, the mixed use nature of it, and the 291 units, roughly, what do we have here? 16,000 square feet of commercial. So next slide. I want to get into more as actual design discussion here. So this is a site plan of the site, color rendered site plan. You can see how the building footprint of the building aligns on the site. And if I could point here, you could see, although the whole footprint of the building is an efficient rectangle kind of diagonally in on your screen there. The building as it rises above is an L-shaped building with some various massings to it to create interest and address different parts of the context. So next slide. Let's go to the next slide even. So that's the ground floor plan, I believe, which is also on the site in context. So I can speak everything with this plan as far as the site goes. So, so as Lance mentioned, this is the ground floor plan, and as Lance mentioned, the approach to the site design and the building design was to create a dynamic mixed-use project that addresses both the plans and the existing context and the plans that are being discussed for the Line Energy Center and in the destination district. It's a very visible site, as you know, with the point on the left, the point of the site on the right-hand side of the screen here, with some city-owned green space there. So that will remain open space. And that's very visible end of the project as you're driving into the city on John Nolan Drive. So that's an important focal point for the design, both in overall image and in identity as well as use. So you can see we place the commercial uses on that end, fronting that city-owned green space, and there'll also be a plaza. It could be hardscape, landscape, mixture of hardscape and landscape that can have an indoor-outdoor relationship between the ground floor commercial space and the site itself. We also wanted to address Olin Avenue, of course, because that's the street front, and we have the main entry in the middle of the building. There, you can see there's a main. Well, that's the vehicular entry, but there's a main human scaled entry there. Yeah, right there. With the club room, with the, I'm sorry, not the club room, but the lobby space. So right there will be the main entry, the lobby space, and all those amenities that will greet residents and potential residents and guests building. The vehicular entry where Janine, I think, originally pointed to with her hand there. Yeah, right there. That's the convenient entry that the public in general will use. So there's some parking that is going to be dedicated to the commercial uses, and that would be accessed from that spot. And then that will also be the entry for short-term visitors, such as deliveries, Uber drivers, that kind of thing. So you go in and out on that in that area. So more of a convenience. And on the left-hand side of the screen here, that is where the residential vehicular entry will be. So you can see there's a ramp that there's a drive that comes in, and then a ramp that goes up on the left-hand side of your screen, and that accesses, and that's just going to be parking for the residents. So again, we go up multi-stories there. We also have on the left-hand side of your screen at grade open space that can be used for pets and dogs in particular, because as we all know, that's a very important part of the rental lifestyle today, is to be able to accommodate pets. And we also have a dedicated area right off that left-hand curb cut for larger scaled service and delivery. And we don't want to move-ins, that kind of. So you'll see as we get more into the images, we've worked very hard to be able to accommodate that as a separate and distinct area, to accommodate that service, to separate it from the everyday happenings of the building, and also to screen it from the public view in the public way and pedestrian way on Olin. we can get into that in a little. So next screen, please. All right, so here's an overall perspective of our building, and this is an aerial, obviously, from the vantage point of John Nolan Drive going into the city. And this is a good view because it just gives you a great snapshot of the overall site and the character of the project and the massing of. This is where I wish I could point a little bit. As you can see, the front point or that city-owned green space is in your foreground. The quasi-public private plaza that will be associated with the commercial space is next to that, and you can see that 3-level commercial space there, that black and glassy element. That's the commercial space. And we'll get to the Olin Avenue elevation or perspectives in a minute, but you can also see on the site the condition of John Nolan Drive, and it's very auto-oriented, and it's always going to be that way. And we also have a rail track that goes through there as well. So there's quite a distance there. There's our site, which we have a significant setback from the rail, which we intend to have pay some attention to on the landscape aspect of it. Yep, right in there. Then we have the rail, and then we have another landscape or not our property, but it is a green space and covered with vegetation that separates the rail from John Nolan. So that side of the project will probably be the least visible side, at least as far as the lower levels go. And that's the side where we have the parking deck. So the parking deck there, if you might want to point to that, is the first four levels of parking right in there. Yes, thank you. And then as the building rises above there on the units, we have 18-story massing. That's the lighter color building that is, I guess for lack of a better term, parallel with Olin Avenue. And then the lower massing at 15 stories is that lighter brownish beige brick massing. And the composition of this building really lends itself to some nice interest with the commercial segment and the entry segment on Nolan Drive, which you'll see in a minute at a lower scale on that 3-story commercial level, and then on the entry side on Olin, you'll see in some images that's a lower, higher bay single-story level that really breaks the scale down. Then we have the parking plinth, of course, at that 4-story level, and then the 14, 15-story element, and then again the 18-story bar that's parallel to Olin. So that really gives some interest in the massing and really achieves addressing the Olin Avenue side, the point on the city greenscape side, and really allows for some fantastic views from the units to both the Capitol. And so all of those objectives, and with some public, or not some public, but some common amenity space on top of that parking deck, as you'll see, too. All criteria to make this. Next slide, please. I think the next slide is same view, just it's a different time of day. memory serves. There you go. So, like I said, same view, different time of day, and it's interesting to see how buildings, especially buildings of this scale and stature. What? Can you go back to that 1 second? Sorry if I said next slide. But what it's
With
interesting
the
to see how
night view?
buildings. Yes, please. To see how buildings, especially of this size and stature and prominence, can change throughout the day. You know, I think we're going the opposite. There we go. Thank you. And so we just wanted to show, you know, how that can work. And this building has a lot of glass, and that itself gives a lot of visual interest depending on what's going on behind. But it's just an interesting way to look at how this can change throughout the days. And one thing to note, and we'll get into a little more, is a part of the element, a design element that we're proposing is on top at the highest level is to have a translucent panel that can be backlit and can have a soft glow in the evening hours. And we acknowledge the importance of the capital, and we wanna respect that, and we think we can do this with the sensitivity in the light levels and the intensity, not to compete with, but to still provide that visual interest. Next slide, please, Jenny. This is the Olin Avenue side. So you can see here a different side of the composition of the building. So this is the longer leg of the building along Olin Avenue, with the lower portion, the horizontal lower level entry portion. So the glass that you see there in the middle of the lower yep, thank you, Janine. That's the entry, and that will be the entry lobby and those amenity spaces there. The lower canopy that you see under that larger horizontal canopy, that's a secondary canopy element that will serve to cover the automobile entry, break down the scale a little bit, add some visual interest, and also serves as the entry to the commercial portion of the building. So the commercial portion has a separate entry as well, and that's further to the. Here you can also see the screening element, the wall that we're using to help screen the vehicular entry to the residential portion, as well as the materials of the project. I'll touch on that here, and you can see how they're used throughout as we go to the different images. But the base, the parking plinth, for lack of a better term, is our masonry material. So you can see it's shown there in the beige color would be brick, and there's also a white or a whitish brick that will be used as well. So at the end of that commercial area, that white would be masonry, and that continues around on the Olin side. We use that as well to break up that facade. You can see also in that brick area, there's some punched openings, and those would be the same translucent panels that we're using at the top of the house. So again, to have a little bit of activity and break up that parking deck, to have a little bit of activity and visual interest for those parking levels. And then above the parking levels, above the tan and white brick, we have a lot of metal panel system and glass. So a lot of glass. We want to really capture views not only to the lake and to the Capitol, those are obviously fantastic. But up high, even up high here, looking the other ways, they're going to have fantastic to the west and to the south as well. So a lot of glass. So we've broken up the long facade here with bays and balconies and different color metal panel. But really wanted to keep the composition fairly simple. Let the sleek lines and simple material palette really speak for itself and really have a nice contemporary simple. The top of that vertical element that has the mechanical penthouse. I think, can you point to that, Janine? Yeah, so that serves a function. That's not just, hey, let's bring this up and have some backlit illuminated panels. That's the mechanical penthouse. We're going to need mechanical penthouse no matter what happens there. So we thought we'd make it in. We'd integrate it more into the design. You see on the Olin Avenue side, this vertical lighter metal panel element that goes up, and we would have those illuminated translucent panels that translates through the building. So you'll see that on the Olin. Talk about that. Next slide, please. We can skip to the next one. This is again another illustration on how the buildings changed. Really dynamic. This is an image from the perspective of John Olin Drive, looking at it, so you can see this really emphasizes the breaking down of the massing. It emphasizes that commercial space, that shorter 15-story tower, and that brick. That's a brick. You can see that's the same brick. That beigeish color. The metal panels. We really wanted to emphasize this end with the combination of balconies and glassy corners in the unit. So that white metal panel end where we have the balconies on I guess part of this left side. So we have some really large balconies there that emphasize the verticality of that. And it's broken down, and they work with the windows of the units to emphasize that verticality. And on the top and the bottom, it's a subtle design element, but if you notice, the top balcony and the bottom balcony there are framed out as boxes to relate to that commercial space. So with the same black metal panel or dark charcoal metal panel to relate to that, and that's the same color of the darker of the metal panel, other side of the building is. Next slide, please. What you can see here also before, you can see here how on the right-hand side along Olin, you can start to see how the landscaping on there really does mask. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next. We did them. We thought we'd show them. Not the time to produce them. We can always go back if anybody has.
You're currently on view 5. Do you want me to forward to the next one?
Nope, this is good. There's just a delay. It just popped up. So there might be a delay between what I see and what you're seeing. So I apologize if it seems like I'm not saying anything. It just popped up. Here's another as we go around the building. So here you can see more of that, the first 4 levels of parking, how we're treating that. So again, we have the tannish brick along the base there. The white is also a brick material. So that would be a whitish brick. And then the punched openings or the windows there would be that translucent paneling to let light penetrate that facade and create some interest. So, we have this vertical pattern, more of a random pattern of the white and brick, as well as the translucent panels to break that scale of that parking down. And you might notice another subtle detail is in this, the potential canopy or covered structure on the common space roof deck, tying in and carrying down that facade. And that has a relationship to what's happening inside the building as well. So it has a relationship to that larger vertical mass, which at the top we have the translucent panels, but it also has a relationship to what's happening inside, and there's going to be common space amenities there. So I'm trying to fully integrate different parts of the building in the next slide, please. You can see how that might look in the evening hours. So, can add a lot of interest to have that light to be able to come through a little bit. Next slide, please. I apologize if you're sitting there waiting for me. It just hasn't flipped on my end.
Should I just start scrolling through them, or do you want to speak to each slide?
Nope. It's good now, and we're almost to the end. So this is a close to ground level perspective of Olin Avenue, just to give you a little closer perspective of how we're breaking down a building of this scale to relate more at the street level. So you can really see on the right there that commercial segment of the building, how that starts to step down and become a real sensitive to that city-owned green space and that plaza. The entry canopies and how that really creates a strong horizontal composition that works well along Olin. The entry and the screen wall. Again, it's not just going to be the architecture, but it's going to be the landscaping. We treat that along Olin and on that green and signage wall, and how we transition from that plaza to that city-owned greens. Something that has thought on, and we welcome your input. Next slide, please. I believe this might be the last one. It's just to show, I think Lance had this up again, but it's just to show the quality of the space. And this might change a few times as we go forward, but this is the concept to create a really quality outdoor common amenity space for the building, with a mixture of hardscape, softscape, covered areas, open air areas, really making this fantastic Class A development. And I think that's the last one, so skip to the next one.
The last one is showing shadow studies.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about those. We've done shadow studies, and like Lance had mentioned, we're a quarter mile or more away from any single family home. So there's no impact on them, and there's really fairly little impact on any multifamily or any residence where shadows go. You can see summer solstice, where the sun is the highest. Very, very little impact, with the exception of maybe later in the evening and very early in the morning, where the shadows might be longer. Next one. And then winter. Next one is winter. You can see how it doesn't flip. And there we go. Again, by 9 a.m. and after, the shadows from this project will be cast along John Nolan and eastward. In winter months, it gets little effect. I think that I lied before, but I think that is.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Lance. Now we have some registrants for public comment with regard to this project that Julie will introduce.
So speaking in opposition, first we have Ellen Kitchell, followed by Janelle Munz.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. So my primary concern, or I have a couple different concerns. One is just the height of the building and how that fits in with the landscape. You're right across the street from a park. It is adjacent to a single family residential area, and so it just seems like the height is inappropriate for the site. It seems way too high. I understand the need for housing and the density there. The other concern that I have is about the Wonder Bar, and I would really like to see it preserved and not demolished. And I would recommend one of two things: one, that they consider incorporating that into that bottom level design, so that they have a unique feature, unique to any other building in Madison, and they could extend that equivalent front to that whole first level. And I think it would be a real draw. If that cannot be done, then I would recommend that for sure the Wonder Bar gets moved. It's historic and it's worthy of landmark designation. So the third thing that came up from the presentation was my concern about it's the proximity of people coming and going from the building in proximity to the John Nolan intersection. I think that's really key. And I know the city was going to do a traffic analysis, so I hope that they can determine how that might affect that intersection. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Next, we have Janelle Munz.
Looks like Janelle is not with us.
Okay, then speaking neither in support nor opposition, we have Erica Buska, followed by Kurt Stagg.
Hi, thank you. I live in the Bay Creek area, and I think the project is very nicely laid out. It is very dense, but I really do want to see increased opportunity for renters in our area. I will say as well, though, that I really believe that the Wonder Bar should be preserved or moved. I really like it when we can blend old with new. For an example, Hotel Indigo and the Palette restaurant incorporated the Mauer Paint Company into its design scheme. The Charmant Hotel in La Crosse converted a candy factory in and took elements of that into designing their hotel. Similarly, I really would hate to lose historic treasured spaces in Madison. We need to preserve the old with the new.
Okay, is that it then?
Yep, that's my point. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Who is next, Julie?
Kurt Stagg is next.
And
You see him on there,
see-
Stefan?
Nope, looks like Kurt is not with us.
Okay, those are the only names I've got wishing to speak.
I thought I saw, hold on a second. No, you're right. That is all registered to speak. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Chair, we do
Yes.
have Alder Carter on the call here if she wants to speak.
I didn't see her raise her hand, but certainly now I do. I'm going to unmute you. Welcome, Alder Carter.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that the whole time I was on UDC, we never had just one item on the agenda. So I'm very jealous of that, but I won't hold it against you.
It took a long time.
Did it? Okay. I think this is a good project. Of course, this is informational, so we're all hearing about it at the same time. I think as it goes through the process, it will change a little bit. But I think that for this parcel next to John Nolan, near the lake, it's the perfect location for high density and number of stories that it is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so that is all the presentation and public comment registered to speak. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Lois.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I think it was a very nice presentation. I like seeing all of the views. I think it'll be a nice beacon at night. I think that was a nice view to show. I do have some questions though. And maybe I'll list all my questions and then let you respond to them. One is, it seems like there may be an opportunity for some green roof area, particularly above the commercial space and then even the overhang at the entrance. I wonder about trash and recycling access from that commercial space on the ground floor. It didn't seem to be any access whatsoever to the trash enclosure from the commercial space. It looked really, you'd have to go out onto the public sidewalk with a cart or something, I think, to get to that spot. And then I was also concerned your amenity space on the roof has almost no sunlight. And I think it was really well illustrated in your shadow study. Even in the summertime, there was very, very little sunlight coming to that. And so, and that's your prerogative, I guess. I'm just, be careful about your plantings and I think it will limit the use of it, especially in the earlier spring and later in the summer, fall time. Lastly, I think you could go with a more vertical landscaping along John Nolan, especially not necessarily in the illuminated areas of the parking structure, but maybe at those vertical brick walls. I think that they are a little plain and they could benefit maybe just from some color landscaping. And that's all I have.
Lois, were you looking for any responses to your comments?
Yeah, I want to know how they're going to access. Well, I want to know about if they're doing or planning on any green roof. I want to know how they're accessing trash and recycling for the commercial space, and what their thoughts are on very virtually no sunlight going to the amenity rooftop.
Okay. So, Joe or Lance, I don't know if you're unmuted, but you're certainly welcome. Oops, hold on.
Yeah, this is Lance.
Go ahead.
I can answer those. So the question about the green roof, there will be some planting areas up on the 5th floor terrace, and I would agree above the commercial space and on those canopies might be a nice location for some lower intensity like sedum plantings in those spots. That would be a good thing for us to look at. The trash and recycling for the commercial, you're correct. They will need to use the building collection area, which is over on the other side. However, I don't think these are going to be being office uses predominantly, and hopefully a nice cafe type use on the lower level. Hopefully they're not significant refuse generators. We do have some space inside the parking if they need to have their own collection area that we could accommodate them. But right now we're thinking they're using the residential area for their refuse collection. And that could be something our management team deals with and takes care of them for them also. So it could be a management issue. The sunlight issue on the terrace, there's give and take on that. I would agree at times it's going to be shaded, but it's also a great vantage point for seeing downtown Madison, watching the fireworks on the 4th of July, things like that. There's some give and take with that issue. And we'll definitely look at our planting schedules to make sure they can handle the shade at those times. I think that addressed all the questions.
Thank you. I think other than that, I think the building is very attractive, and I think it'll be an asset.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Before I move on to Russell, I've been informed that Kurt Steege is now in attendance, and so if you are able to unmute him, Stefan, we'd be more than happy to hear what he has to say about the project.
I think I am unmuted. I hope I am now unmuted. I was not unmuted before, that I could tell at least or accomplish. I'm here on behalf of the Madison Trust for Historic Preservation. We acknowledge that this entity, the Urban Design Commission, does not really have jurisdiction over the fate of the Wonder Bar. But the trust has an interest in that fate. And I do believe that there's a very significant public interest in that, the result of that as well. I simply want to say that we hope to engage with the development team on that topic to see if something can be accomplished. I don't have any specifics to offer, but I hope it can be successful. And that's all I have.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Next is Russell and then Shane. Let's see. Russell, we can't hear you, although I'm showing you as being unmuted.
How about now? Any better?
Yes.
I don't sound like Tom did a few sessions ago, I hope.
No, that was unique to Tom.
Okay. All right. Sounded good, Tom. I was saying thank you for all of the detail in this informational. This really gives me a lot to think about and respond to here. So great presentation. I had a question about this might be for staff. Is there anything I understand this did go before the Landmarks Commission, and is there anything from that meeting that we should consider?
Yes, Russell. Janine outlined what our purview is in the staff report, as well as she paraphrased the Landmarks Commission's action.
Okay.
If you do have that and you want to browse through it.
Yep, I'll do that. Thank you, Cliff. A couple of questions came to mind for the design team. I wanted to stick with the topic of the roofs. I would second. It seems like some great opportunities for green roofs. The thing that came to mind for me is right now, at least in the elevations and plans, it's looking like a lighter color, a white roof, maybe a TPO type roof. What at least it's white in color in the presentation. Whether or not you're actually intending that, I would just advise to consider that carefully. The lower roofs could really cause a glare condition for some of those units that are close to those lower roofs, and so anyway, green roof would definitely create a nice experience compared to a white roof with a lot of glare. And then just piggyback on that same topic, seems like a great opportunity for at least a readiness for solar power with all the roof that is there. So I just encourage the design team to consider that. One question for the design team: I didn't see louvers articulated in any of the elevations for the ventilation for the units. Can you speak to whether that's just a missing detail, or if there's already a plan to handle that some other way?
Yeah, this is Lance again. I can address that. So the 18th floor is our mechanical penthouse. So that will have louvers on it, facing not the ends of or facing kind of
the north elevation. We see some.
Yeah. So the translucent panels, lit panels, those are on the sides of the building. The louvers for the cooling towers and the intake and exhaust for that would be facing up on the roof and then out through the side. So the heating and cooling for the units will be a water source heat pump system. It's a forced air system, and all the mechanicals for that will be up on the roof in that area. So there's no like magic packs or no louvers for the units associated with that. We will have bath exhaust and laundry exhaust to deal with. And right now, the plan is to take those vertically and have vertically venting for both. So in theory, there would be virtually no penetrations on the outside. So at least that's the plan right now.
Thank you for that. I mean, I really like the design. The exterior of the building I think is very nice. Part of the reason I wanted to ask about whether there might be other details coming that might complicate it at all.
The plan is to keep it pretty clean and contemporary and pretty sleek looking. I can comment also on the solar. We are evaluating solar panels on the top roof, and it's going to present some challenges for us. I think the main issue is probably more of an aesthetic issue where they would be sticking up and be fairly visible from a distance, where we're trying to screen everything and have clean lines on the top. But we are looking at it, and we'll see what we can do there. There really isn't a lot of real usable roof space for the solar panels to go between the mechanical penthouse and the other roof projection on the east side of the building. But we are looking into that.
Thank you.
Yep.
One more comment on the discussion of louvers on the exterior. I guess a reminder to the design team that PT construction is going to be integrating vertical openings through the slabs will be a significant coordination effort, and so just want to have that reminder. I don't think it really affects design necessarily, but it could be substantial.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of coordination issues with that, but this is the fourth post-tension mid-rise building that we've done, so we know what we're facing with that, and our contractor has a lot of experience with PT buildings also.
Great. My last question for now is about stormwater. I think the project that's going in doesn't look to be really creating any more of a challenge related to stormwater necessarily than what's there today. I could be wrong about that, but I did want to know if the project team is considering any improvements given the opportunity with this project to have better water infiltration and dealing with stormwater in a responsible way. Is there any discussion or consideration there?
Yeah, it is. We're a little early in the design aspects for that, but I do think it'll be an improvement over what's there existing. But I think the current plan is to have some sort of retention basin along what I'd call the north side of the property or along the railroad track. We have a 20-foot setback there, so there could be kind of a long retention basin, but we're just getting started on the design aspects for that. And yeah, it'll be a lot of play on the design and different types of, looking at different types of maybe permeable or porous pavement and infiltration areas and things like that. But it's definitely a major focus for our civil team working on this.
Thank you. I'll let my colleagues have a turn. That's all for now.
Okay, Shane, and then Jessica.
Okay, thanks. And that was a good segue, I think, into some of my comments. A lot of positive things with the project overall. And namely, I think the fact that it's largely a surface parking lot site that's being replaced with density is a beautiful thing, and something I'm glad to see. Really appreciated the thoughtfulness of drop-offs and vehicular circulation, all those activities that are part of a large development like this. Also, I would just encourage you to think about the bike connectivity. I'm thinking most people are headed towards downtown from the site, but there's multiple directions and desire paths. And to, I think it was Helen's point about the intersection, that can be kind of a tricky spot to cross on a bike. So thinking about where your bike parking is and how to connect to some of the trails around you, or if you're working downtown, how this like volume of people potentially on bikes would navigate to some of those spaces. And then I would agree with the stormwater comment, but because it's largely a redevelopment and mostly impervious now, I think you're probably in good position to make an improvement. The scale of the building, I think from a landscape perspective, really demands a landscape response of a similar scale. And obviously, I know these rendering, this isn't a planting plan or planting design yet, but I think while there are places for detailed and low ornamental landscaping along Olin Avenue, a lot of these spaces really need tree canopy to support the mass and the scale of the building. So in particular, like Lois had mentioned, along that railroad corridor and playing off of the rhythm of the building potentially. But I think what immediately catches my eye is that commercial plaza space and really building up some planting density, possibly ornamental tree scale and higher to cradle that space. That could be a really great space, almost like a porch where you have all this activity on the street, but you don't necessarily want to be right there on that intersection. So I could see that being a successful space with more planting density around the edges. And then just in general, I would say there are places where the shrubs and the line of plantings might get you the landscape points, but do otherwise really nothing for the project or the human experience. So I think, again, like maybe refraining from some of those kind of fussy, smaller landscape beds along the railroad corridor where they don't bring much value or benefit, and concentrating them in larger masses would be one of my recommendations moving forward. But otherwise, glad to see it. I think it's a nice project. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Jessica.
Yeah, I wanted to point out a couple things. First, when you said you wanted the design to be sleek, I think you're succeeding at that. It has a very nice vertical rhythm to it that leans toward being elegant, and having the plinth on the bottom. I think that's a smart way to deal with this site. That said, if you decide that you need to incorporate the Wonder Bar, I would, of course, you'll be careful with that because the Wonder Bar is nothing like this building. The more I look at this building and all the corners of it, you have so much going on, and I think some really lovely details in there. I wanted to talk about the beacon because I think we were asked to comment on the beacon. And as to that, your night renderings are gorgeous. And I just, I'll put a vote in there that I think as Madison grows, that our nightscape of how our buildings look in the tops of our buildings, this is a chance for development in our city. And since this is so far away from the Capitol, I don't find it competing. I think it would actually be nice when you're on the Capitol side to look out and see something over in this area. Another thing I noticed is that you said you had 3 bedrooms. So I'm hoping families would move in. And it's a primo spot being up the street from the pool and across from the park. That said, I just kind of wondered about children in this area, like what would happen if they're near the railroad tracks, what the patio might be like for them. If you could maybe slow down cars as they're coming out of the drive in case there are families walking down the sidewalk to the pool, and so on. I would hope it's activated a lot because there's a lot of outdoor activity that could be done around this site. But lovely design. Thank you for presenting it.
Thanks, Jessica. Tom, and then I see Shane has his hand raised again. So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just in general reaction, I have been involved in a lot with the Alliant Energy Center planning process. This certainly fits specifically in terms of that site, both the density and even the height. But I think we're all aware that, particularly for the close but not exactly surrounding neighborhood, this feels like a big ask in a sense because the height is exceptional for Madison. So I would just point out 4 areas where they've all been addressed tonight, and I just want to reemphasize them. Areas where I hope Lance and his team can come back and show some sort of aggressive accommodation. One is the affordable housing aspect. You said you're talking to WIDA, and 20% at the 80% of county median income. If in that number of units, I would really like to see that implemented if possible. I think the affordable housing aspect would go a long way to making the neighborhood feel better about this. Also, the sustainability features. We mentioned green roofs, solar, maybe creative stormwater management aspects, but things that we didn't talk a lot about your HVAC system, but just how green or sustainable will this building be? The more that we can hear about that and the more aggressive you are in terms of pursuing sustainability, I think that would be something that folks would appreciate. One that didn't come up yet, the third one that has been addressed a lot is historic preservation, the Wonder Bar. And we have a couple examples in Madison right now, two projects that have been before us just in the last year of buildings, larger multifamily or multi-use buildings that are respecting old historic structures. One is the mass timber project that we just reviewed on East Wash. The other is what I call the Pizzeria Uno project out on Mineral Point, where they're moving the older house. They're going to move it sideways and incorporate it. People have done creative things with what feel like historic structures, incorporating them into contemporary projects. I'd just like you to explore that. Kurt Steggy made the offer, and I hope you'll take it up with him and see what can be done on preserving the Wonder Bar. And then finally, one that hasn't been managed, but I know has come up in neighborhood discussions, is the impact of potential impact on traffic volume, specifically on Olin. Well, I think most people are going to be looking to go downtown or use the bike path, hopefully. Looking at aspects of what I call transportation demand management. Are you going to, one is show us explicitly how you'll connect to the Wingra bike path. I think that's very important. It's right there. It is a big feature to this building, but just how will that be related to the indoor, where your bike parking spaces are? Show us how easy it's going to be for people to bike out of this building to downtown, because it should be very, very easy. And then other things, would tenants be offered bike passes or any incentive not to have a car? And a bicycle station maybe at the building. Anything along the transportation demand management line, again, as a feature. I think those things, affordable housing, sustainability, transportation, and historic preservation, 4 elements that if you can aggressively pursue and show us what you're doing with each of those would help very much in terms of sort of the neighborhood welcome to this building. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Jane?
Yeah, good comments from Tom. And also Jessica reminded me to comment on the beacon, which I did not yet. But while I overall like the project a lot, I really dislike the beacon. I love, Jessica, I love what you were saying about this activity and life in the nightscape and seeing kind of the glow of individual units in our city. But to me, the beacon is not that. It's something entirely different. It's almost more of a signage piece, which would be kind of the exact opposite, in my opinion. It's something you see from the distance that doesn't denote life and activity. It denotes like, hey, look at me, or branding or something. And I don't think it contributes to the project. I think the lighting images would actually be more beautiful without it. So yeah, a strong vote of opposition to that feature. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Russell and then Christian. Where'd he go? There he is.
Okay, got me? Okay.
Yep.
I'll take a shot at the lantern. My reaction to it is that, as was presented to us, is that there's a mechanical space there, so there's a functional need for that mass, and you're trying to, do something aesthetically pleasing with it. I'm not convinced the lantern with the translucent panels is the right approach. I do wonder if it's an opportunity for something else. So I guess I'm 50-50 right now. if you could make the moon always be right there in that, next to the building, it looks pretty nice. But one point I did want to bring up about the lantern, I wanted to ask the design team, can you just speak to what's behind the translucent panels on the first and second floors? Is that parking behind there?
Yeah, that's correct. On the lower 4 levels, that's parking.
On the north, okay, thank you. On the north, the train track elevation, I would definitely encourage a careful study to make sure that the lighting from the translucent panels on the first and second floors is very close to the lighting of the lantern. I think it could work okay if they are close in their intensity, their luminance. If they're much different, it might be pretty distracting. So there's just might be a way to make it work.
My question would be to Lance. Are you proposing that that's just translucent glass and it's the illumination from the parking levels shining through?
Yes, that's correct. So whatever the parking is inside would be, casting through those translucent panels. So it's not going to have a totally uniform appearance, if cars are there and stuff, but it gives it some activity. I think the level of light should be pretty comparable, though, to the roof. I think that's the intent, is to try to have them be pretty equivalent. And we're trying not to call the feature on the top a beacon, because it's really not meant to be that. It's more of a soft lit lantern. So that's the concept behind it.
One question on the lantern: do the translucent panels allow natural light into the space for the benefit of the facility staff that are working on it? Yeah.
Actually, probably not. I think up there we don't want to have any shadows cast on it. So I think that's going to be a separate walled off area. The amount of time that's spent in that mechanical penthouse won't be very significant. But the translucent panels in the parking garage, it's the same material, and that's going to allow some natural light into the parking levels, which is a really nice feature. It makes them a little more inviting.
Okay, thank you. One more question, and Tom touched on it, but can you speak to how you're balancing what we heard in the presentation as a lot of glass in your design approach, as far as keeping this building operating in a reasonable environmental footprint? And can you speak to any strategies you're?
Yeah, so again, trade-offs with that also, where it'll definitely create some challenges with heating and cooling the units, but it also is a great amenity to take advantage of the views that you'll have for 360 degrees around the building. But one of the questions that came up from a prior commission member was about the HVAC system or sustainability. And what I like about the water source heat pump system, it's basically a forced air heating and cooling system, but the heat pumps take energy out of this water loop that goes through the building. And different times of the day, one side of the building might be in the sun and want some cooling, and the other side is in the shade and might want to have a little bit of heating going on. So one's putting heat back into the water pipe loop, the other one's taking heat out, and it complements itself. And that's where a lot of the efficiency is realized in these systems. So they're all kind of, instead of the whole building dumping heat or pulling heat from it, causing a lot of excess heating and cooling of the water loop, it kind of offsets itself, especially in the shoulder parts of the year in Wisconsin. So there's a lot of good benefits with that. And I think just some of the nature of, apartments, they're not huge footprints. They really don't have a lot of exposure corner units will have more so, and some of these bay units than your typical interior units. But most of your frontage, and you've got 3 walls with no windows on it, and the outside wall will have it. So there's some efficiencies with that, but definitely, the glass does have a lot of positives, but it does create some challenges with heating and cooling.
Thank you for that response. I didn't want to speak for you, but I did want to give kudos to the team here for a centralized approach on this building. I think there's a very significant benefit from doing that, particularly in the ventilation of this building, as you work through how that occurs with a dedicated outside air type system. That could be quite advantageous and do well for you in terms of the overall footprint and the glass discussion.
Thank you.
And then last comment.
That was your last comment.
No.
Christian Harper. Please tell me you're not going to have any more HVAC questions, and then I'll unmute you. Good. You're unmuted.
No HVAC questions from me. This was actually last on my list of comments that I had scribbled down, but since everybody else was just addressing it, I will weigh in on the non-beacon. I don't like the idea of that at all. I mean, it's to me, it's just a glaring here we are. Look at this very tall building here. I guess I could be convinced that might be some type of asset to what this building looks like at night, but just a large glowing white blank space to me doesn't even come close to what would be, aesthetically something that, people would look at and really go, wow, that's neat, or that's a landmark, or something with some sense of artistry about it. I know such things exist. I've seen pictures of illuminated peaks of tall buildings before, and I guess it could work, but I don't see that this iteration here comes anywhere close to that. So I would be a big thumbs down on it in its current form, and would encourage them to look at different ways to incorporate that into their design if they're really set on having something up there. The first thing that jumped out to me at looking at all these various elevations was, this is a very balcony heavy building. The ones to the far right in this elevation here have got to be some of the biggest balconies I've seen on any project that have come before us. I like the fact that despite their size, there's been some effort in making them look a little more interesting and tying into the overall design of the building with the boxed elements at the top and the bottom floor at this corner, and in the middle 2 white sections having those what I would call eyebrow balconies up at the top. Now the other side. But it's still a lot of balcony space, and I'm always just worried that the tenants of these places will help out the overall design by not cluttering up the balconies with a lot of junky stuff. But interesting treatment of those, and thanks for putting some well thought out. Now, am I reading this correctly, that this view here is fine, that so those middle 2 white sections, like I said, the 2 sort of eyebrow balconies on top, the ones immediately to the left of that, do I read that correctly, that the top several balconies have a different colored bottom to sort of tied into that color of that section of the building. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I believe that's correct. Whether it's painted to match, but somehow those will be framed out in like a metal material, and either it's painted or we'll extend some sort of metal panel across there, trying to create that box effect.
Yeah, that's an interesting treatment. Getting to some of the landscaping elements, most of the stuff that I wanted to bring up was covered by Shane and Lois. I especially concur with having some, perhaps some columnar narrow evergreens up against the masonry on the John Nolan Drive site. I'm not averse to having the low foundation plantings, but Shane's correct. You're not going to pick up on those, and they're not going to do much for softening the base of the building there, like some upright plants would do closer to the building. I notice you have a row of deciduous trees going along there, but I notice on the plan that obviously you're limited by the railroad's right of way, and I see that you're moving the sanitary line. Do you anticipate any problems with planting those type of trees right along that edge of that border of your property and the railroad's property?
Yeah, so I wouldn't take too much into the landscaping that's shown on these renderings. They're really, the architect's preliminary vision of what we're going to do. Our civil team, when we come back, with our formal application, we'll have a fully developed landscape plan at that time. But there's definitely going to be some challenges with doing planting along that north area, just due to all the activity that's going to be happening. A lot of the utility work is going to be pretty deep, but I don't think there are issues with plantings in there. We just have to be careful with where we're putting them.
Okay, I'll be anxious to see what the final landscape design is of those. And I would just also concur with Shane's comments about, and I realize from the plans that you have limited space outside the terrace of the, I assume, potential restaurant that is yours to landscape. But, you should really invest some plant material into that spot and wrapping around the front to the Olin Avenue side too. There's opportunities to do some really dense, nice plantings, and I think this building deserves something a little above and beyond some of the run-of-the-mill plantings we see. I'd like to see something on the high end. And my last comment on the really great-looking terrace, the challenges pointed out about sun exposure and just the general exposure of plants on there. I would say, invest some significant effort into, having somebody spec plants that are going to do okay, and the exposure both to light, outside temperatures in the winter, and also multi-season interest. I've seen some of these projects come before us, and people will take a large planting bed and put either a shrubbery or perennials in there that have a very short season of interest, and there really should be more of an effort to have spring, summer, and fall interest in the plantings out in an area like that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Christian. Craig, thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Cliff. So a lot of good comments already by the commissioners that I won't elaborate too much. Great presentation, great design. I think a lot of that's been reviewed already. Just a couple things. Christian mentioned some of these, but the canopy or the canopies and the framed balconies, I think, are really nice visual interest that you put in there. Lois mentioned a little bit about the sun on the amenities space. I do like the interest that the canopy of the amenity space is there. So maybe if that turns into an arbor or more of an open structure, it still does help to break up that space along that sign, the John Nolan Drive. And then the other item, just to mention, the lantern itself. If we took this building in a vacuum, I think it's a really creative thing to do. But when you put in the surrounding spaces, this isn't a dense skyline that we're trying to put some more visual interest in. It's going to kind of stand alone where this is. Even with the further development, there's not that many other buildings going around it. So I think with a nod to the pretty close park and residential areas, I just don't see more light pollution as appropriate, frankly. And I would just take it away.
Is that it?
That's all I had. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Up next is Russell.
Question for the design team. Any thoughts about the aesthetic of the glass and whether have you thought about a darker color or any color to the glass or?
Joe, I'll let you take that one.
Sure. I think I'm muted. Oh, no.
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Cliff. Yeah, we've been exploring the possibility of using slightly tinted glass in certain areas that would correspond to the different panel colors. So I'm not going to say we've decided that we pursue that or not, but that is something we're.
I'm glad you said that because there was a thought I had as an opportunity with the amount of glass. It could add some interest potentially. So glad you're thinking about it. We'd be curious to see how it develops. Thank you.
Thank you. And while we're looking at this and we're on that subject, should we infer that with the discussion of the HVAC systems and the renderings that these are inoperable window units?
No, they'll definitely be operable components to them. I see what you're saying. It doesn't look like we're rendering like operable sashes and all these, but not every window will be operable, but we're going to have a fair amount.
Okay. So you might have an awning or a hopper within a unit that will be
Correct.
further developed when you come back. Okay.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. My turn. With regard to the staff report, we were asked to make some comments with regard to the, if you could just keep it right there, Janine, with regard to the public and commercial entrances. And the one thing, I really agree with all the positive comments, and I think it's a really nice design. But the one thing that keeps bothering me about it is this lower canopy where the cars are driving in and out. It makes me think that it's not somebody's house, that it's a hotel. And I keep thinking, boy, if that little canopy wasn't there, and now maybe a Uber driver or not a Uber driver, but a Uber customer might get wet hopping in, it would make that residential entrance that Joe had pointed out in the floor plan, and maybe even the commercial entrance, much more visible, particularly at street level. And I guess I'd just like to ask if it's just me or if any of the other commissioners have any strong feelings one way or the other with regard to that. Okay, must be just me. Well, that's all I had. Oh, wait a minute. I see Russell raising his hand.
I guess I would just second that there's a lot of interest in that facade under there. And we just been kind of given a tease of what that is. And I know that there's trash pickup under there. So I don't know. I did wonder, Cliff, if that canopy is hiding things more than it is expressing that this is an important entrance. I guess was my read of it.
Yeah, and I'm specifically talking about where that little car is, not the part that's screening all the loading and unloading, but specifically where that drive turnaround is and the public garage entrance. Okay, Craig, and then so I see Craig and then Shane.
Thanks, Cliff. Now that you mentioned the hotel, it does kind of feel like an institutional or hospital type of a feel. That you're right. Maybe not sure what the solution is, but it's a very built up entrance, and maybe it's looking for something a little softer or more inviting.
Okay, Shane, and then Lois.
Yeah, Cliff, I think you make a good point. I do think the functions they've described, though, are necessary functions to happen on this site. So it would get displaced somewhere. I think I've seen this handled actually very nicely in other projects where the key to it is that it's not designed for vehicles. It's a vehicular space, but it shares uses with people and other functions, and I think that would be the key to this project as well, that it's not just a quick pass through vehicular space, but that there's edges that are people spaces and that there's plants.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not arguing against the layout of it or the function, just the roof over it.
Oh, just the roof.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would it be a little bit more urban if there wasn't this big, huge drive under thing like you might see at a hotel?
I see. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
And that way, maybe exposing more of the building entrance. Let's see. Lois is up. Unless you had anything else to add, Shane.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I'm wondering if it does have a very hotel-like appearance. I'm wondering if just the canopy shifting over to just the commercial space would help, I guess, simplify that and give you a more direct or a better queuing to where the commercial entrance is. Or perhaps if you get rid of it entirely and you make the second level canopy, I don't know, maybe there's a lighting issue, but there's also that weird space between the canopies that I think will need to be addressed. It's just going to be, that's where your pigeons are going to live. But you're going to have a bird problem. So yeah, I agree that needs a little bit more finessing. And then I didn't weigh in on the lighting feature at the penthouse, and I do agree. I think the lighting from the fenestrations of all of the units are enough for kind of the illumination quality that would be desirable for this building at night. And so I would also agree that the lighting at the penthouse is not required or desirable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. We've gone around a couple of times here, and we've gotten good information. We've gotten really good feedback. Before I move on to business by members, is there anything else that any of the other commissioners might like to mention, or is there anything from the design team or the development team before we adjourn on this item? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much, Lance and Joe. We look forward to seeing you back soon.
Thank you. All great feedback. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me get back to my my agenda here. Where is it? Lost it. Anyway, that's our last item on the agenda, I believe, other than business by members. I would, let me see if I can unmute our new member, Alder Arboris. Welcome. If there's anything you'd like to say, anything you'd like to tell us about yourself, we're interested and appreciate your time and your membership on the commission.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say, since this group has such an eye for aesthetics and style and that sort of thing, I think I should probably blur my rear view, my home in the background, so you guys don't critique me. But I've been relegated to a spot in our house for working at home, and so this is where I'm at. But I'll just say I'm super excited to be working alongside of each of you. This is my second term as an alder on the Madison Common Council, so looking forward to taking what I've learned the last couple of years and applying it here. I'll share that this might be an interesting fact for you all, is that when Governor Evers was elected, I was selected to be a part of his team at the Department of Safety and Professional Services. So I served as an executive director there to be a policy and operational liaison to a number of boards, committees, councils, and commissions. And one of those was the AE Joint Board, or at its longer term, our name is the Examining Board of Architects, Landscape Architects, Professional Engineers, Designers, and Professional Land Surveyors. So it was really exciting to work with a number of the boards, but I really definitely enjoyed the AE Joint Board. I enjoyed each of the sections and the chairs of those sections and the folks that were on there. Everything from helping them from codifying administrative rules to at times needing to be in closed session and deliberate on disciplinary actions for folks that are licensed as well. So from sort of soup to nuts with those boards, I was a big part of that process. So I did leave that post about 6 months ago. I'm now the deputy administrator, or also known as a chief operations officer within the Division of Early Care and Education at the Department of Children and Families. So excited about that new opportunity, but really, really did enjoy working with the AE board and others. So I'm not going to assume to say that I know a lot of things or know, anything at all that happens here within UDC, but definitely have some familiarity with the professions that you folks come from. So I look forward to these discussions and being a part of the actions that we take here. I do know that, my understanding of the intent of having a person who also serves on Plan Commission, which I've been appointed to as well, is to have a connection point between UDC and Plan. I know sometimes things can ping around between the two. So in full transparency, I don't want to say I'm a silver bullet on that. Like if there's a breakdown, I guess technically I'll be serving as somewhat of a liaison between the two, but I'll do my best. And then I think the other thing is I serve the Aldermanic District of the 20th Aldermanic District. And so that's the far west side. So it includes some neighborhoods such as Green Tree, Meadowwood, Prairie Hills. It's a very, I would say, very residentially dense district. And we have some really big lots. And so, it's not uncommon to have like a 1/3 acre lot or a 1/4 acre lot, that sort of stuff. A lot of fully grown trees. I absolutely love District 20 and our neighborhoods that we have here. So that's a little bit, a background of District 20. I'm married. We have a daughter who's 11 years old in virtual learning at Higo Elementary, we have 2 dogs, Max and Romeo. And maybe I can introduce one of them. Max, come here. Okay. They're both teddy bears. So that's a Bichon Free Shih Tzu mix. This is Maximus right here. And this is Romeo. They look like twins, but they're not. But they're our pride and joy. These are our little guys. So we're a dog family. I'm absolutely allergic to cats. That's another fun fact about me. When I met my wife, she had 3 cats at the time. So I don't know how I won that that battle, but I did.
So she picked you over the cats. Well, that's a good sign.
I think she sometimes regrets that decision probably. But yeah, I mean, that's me in a nutshell. You know, I'm again super excited to be here. And you know, thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about myself.
You're welcome. And with any luck, and maybe even this calendar year, we'll all be at the same table together.
Touché.
Hey, anything else? Any general comments or other business by members? Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Shane for the Divine 9 garden project that we reviewed this week. It's a lovely project. I didn't know anything about it, and I think it's an addition to the UW campus near it's Celery Hall, right next, sort of in the right off the campus, the Eastern Campus Mall. And Shane presented to the UW Design Review Board, which you guys appointed me to a long time ago, and it's a very cool project. There's want to highlight that. Thank you.
Good. Congratulations, Shane.
Shane, were you the designer on that project?
I'm one of the designers. Yeah, I'm working with Dayton Schroeder out of our DC office, and also Aaron Gibbs in our Madison office. And if you're not familiar with it, Divine 9 are 9 Black fraternities and sororities that have historically been very underrepresented on campus. So it's a very, very cool project to be a part of.
Yeah, I am president of one of those organizations. So we were there at the groundbreaking, and it was a very nice project.
Cool. I didn't see you. I was there too. Awesome.
Well, it is a small world, as Alder Aboris was kind of pointing out there earlier. Okay. Anything from staff? No.
No announcements, staff, unless there are any questions for me about anything.
I see Craig has his hand raised.
Well, I just wanted to say to the Alder, thanks for taking care of my old stomping ground. Your district is where I grew up, so thanks for representing my old neighborhood.
All right. Well, see, now we're learning even more. We see, Janine, when we have these light agendas, we tend to find out a lot more about each other than if it's 11:30 at night.
Yeah, I used to cause trouble at the Meadow Ridge Library quite a bit, so I don't anymore, except when I go to vote.
So when those CW initials carved in the side of the building, not you? Okay. Anything else?
Thank you to our IT staff for all your support.
Yep. Thank you, Tanya and Stefan. And also thank you, Janine and Julie, for your help. And look forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks. Without any further announcements, by unanimous consent at 6:23, we're adjourned.
Good night, all.
Good night.
You.
Good night.
Night.